Hi and welcome back to the channel on this very chilly Monday afternoon. I've been meaning to do this video for quite a while now, and it's the first one I've done on the Range Rover Sport L320 2010, and it's a 3-litre TDV6 HSE model. I've been meaning to do this, but I thought I'd wait till the last MOT was passed or failed, which I'll tell you about soon. So it's coming up to 5 years, and it's the 5th MOT I've had on it. So what I plan to do is do a 5-year ownership report detailing all the costs, including insurance, maintenance, how much fuel it's cost, what's gone wrong with it, how much it's cost to repair, whether I've enjoyed the car, whether I'm going to keep it or not. And if you stay till the end of the video, I'll give you my thoughts on that particular subject. So I'll break this down into several different headings. So we've got cost of road tax and insurance. Then we've got, I've had to write all this down, otherwise I'll forget the damn lot. Then we've got miles covered and fuel consumption, faults and maintenance, which is probably the one that you are most likely going to be interested in, and then the total cost of 5 years of ownership, mainly in terms of maintenance, because as you know, the road tax and insurance is a constant, and you're not going to get away with not having either of those. So if you're looking to buy a Range Rover Sport or Range Rover of any type really, I suppose, particularly the L322 and L320 models, this might be of interest to you in determining whether or not you feel that the costs involved and the maintenance is something that you want to take on. So let's start with the first one, and that is the road tax and insurance. And these are costs that, if you're a law-abiding citizen, such as most of us are, you're not going to get away without paying. So insurance. So insurance is a difficult one, I suppose, and it depends on your circumstances. And I've found that over 5 years, I've actually used 5 different insurance providers, and that's because they do not reward loyalty. Every year they hike the insurance premium, which I suppose you can expect in a way, but you shop around and you can get it cheaper. So in 2018 I paid £530 for a year's insurance. This year, after shopping round, I've found I've got it down to £354. Now that is a like-for-like policy, and it's not a cut down, pared down policy at all. It's of the same type. So then we come on to car tax, and as you all know, diesel cars, especially big SUVs like this one, attract pretty much the maximum they can throw at it, and that for this year is £615. So before you've even sat in and driven the car, it's going to cost you £969 just to have the bloody thing sitting on the driveway or in your garage. I'll come back to this later in the video as a summary, and whether or not I'm going to continue owning this particular car. So we come to miles covered and fuel consumption. Now I've kept accurate records of the fuel consumption for the first 2 years and 7,188 miles, and I averaged over that distance 21.13 miles per gallon, and that's a mixture of long distance and urban driving, mainly biased, I'd say 75-25 in favour of urban. So most of my journeys have been relatively short around town. The highest I managed on a run was 27.8, 2 mile per gallon, and the lowest was 17.25. And again, when it's cold, you usually use a little bit more fuel. The onboard fuel gauge I found is quite over optimistic, and when it was saying I'm averaging at the moment 22.4 mile per gallon, whereas actually it's around 19ish. Because I do mainly short journeys, I tend to fill up with the premium or Shell Ultimate or SO equivalent. And to fill up from empty about a week ago, it cost me £124. So how many miles have I completed? In total, over 5 years, it is 9,692. And I'll just quickly tell you how much per year over the 5 years. First year, 2,600. Second year, 3,124. Then we had COVID, which I didn't do many miles in, so it went down to 1,698, then 956, and in the past 12 months, I've done just under 1,300 miles. Total, 9,692. And again, using a car such as this over short journeys isn't the most cost effective. It's not good for the car. You tend to have more maintenance problems because of that, and one of those will come up in the maintenance section that I'm going to be talking about very soon. So there you can see the average fuel consumption and the mileage I've covered. Okay, now we come on to the faults and maintenance and how much it costs to do each of those particular items. And this is a list of everything that I've paid out on the car over the last 5 years, down to the smallest component really. I don't think there's anything I've missed. So sit down and let's go through the list. Now I bought the car in April 2018, and when I bought it, the previous MOT said two of the tyres were getting quite near to their limit of the lifetime. So in June 2018, I put on a new set of Avon ZX7 tyres. These were fitted at Halfords. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going to Halfords for your tyres, but I did, because I couldn't get these tyres from anyone else at the time. And the total cost was £547.96. So that's the first thing. Now, also in, I think it was June, possibly because of something that happened when the tyres were fitted, one of the tyres developed a leak, and we were on holiday at the time, and the tyre kept on going down over a period of a day and a half, not totally flat, but it was constant, and I kept on having to blow the tyre up. When I got back, I investigated a bit more, and it was found to have a hairline crack in one of the wheels. Now, I considered whether to just replace the wheel or not, but because it was such a minute hairline crack, I decided to take it to a local specialist who repairs alloy wheels for a living, and he did that, and it's been fine right up until this day, and that was a total cost of £90 to get that done. Moving on to the following year, and in August 2019, quite a common problem raised its head, and that was leaks on the passenger side. And this was, most people said it'd be a leak under the scuttle, because it was getting blocked, drain it was getting blocked, but it wasn't that. And I tracked it down to the A-pillar. Behind the trim there are a couple of holes where the connection fits, and there's a sponge, and over time that deteriorates, and then it lets in water, and in the passenger compartment it gets drenched and causes a lot of electrics down there. So yeah, that was repaired by myself, and really easy fix, and anyone can do it if you come across that problem, and it is common. And that cost me £5 to fix, and that's been covered in a previous video. By the way, everything I mention in the maintenance that I've made a video of, I'll put in the link below. Moving on to 2020, January, and it became a problem to lock the car door. It was the driver's side, and sometimes it would lock, sometimes it wouldn't, and this again is a very common problem, and it's the door latch. And I took it to a local specialist, which is just around the corner from me. He's an ex-JLR mechanic, so I booked it in with him to replace the latch, and that cost £245. Now, March 2020, now this was my biggest spend, because I thought, yes, they're service items, most of them, so I'll just read through what I had done. And this was with the same guy, and if anyone's interested in a very good JLR mechanic who is based in North Birmingham, let me know, and I'll put his link in the description below. So what did I have done? Cam belts were replaced, fuel pump belt, auxiliary belt, service and fitting of a modified second turbo drain tube. We had a problem with on hard acceleration when the second turbo kicks in, because the drain is slightly too long, oil builds up, and then once you boot it you get a plume of smoke out the back and it looks like a fog. So that's been replaced with a shorter tube, and it's fine now. Also, I had a check for restricted performance, which kept on coming up periodically, and that was traced to through the diagnostics to be water in fuel. So he took the filter out, drained it, and reset the water detection sensor. All of those jobs, and I thought this wasn't bad, and that came in at £910. Moving on to July 2020, another common problem, low coolant message when you start the car. Now I know it wasn't a problem because I kept the coolant level topped up. So again, a sensor in the bottom of the coolant tank. So I did that one myself, and the cost of the new coolant tank, which was all it cost me apart from the time, and that come in at £21.68. And again, that's in a video that I've released a couple of years ago. Now move on to item 7. In July 2020, the alarm kept going off, and it wouldn't set. So we had a check, and it was a message of bonnet open, even though the bonnet was closed, obviously. Again, this is another common issue on Range Rover L320 320s, and it's a very straightforward DIY job. So I purchased a genuine JLR part. It took 30 minutes to replace at the cost of £40.84. Item 8. In December 2020, I had to replace the 12-volt socket in the boot at a cost of £11.82, which was a very simple job to carry out. Now, January 2021, in the December previously, it had failed its MOT on a steering, UJ and emissions. Now remember that this was during the lockdown, the car was hardly being used, and short journeys, and I felt the steering getting tighter and tighter. And it failed on a seizing UJ, universal joint, on the lower steering shaft. And this again is a fairly common problem because it's exposed to the elements, and if you don't keep it greased and lubricated, it will eventually seize. You get tight steering, it'll deform, and it is a dangerous problem, to be honest. So I booked that in with the local mechanic again, and he replaced the steering shaft and the UJ. Also, it failed on a CV boot that was split. That was replaced, and an MOT test. And he also did replace the fuel filter because I started getting the water and coolant message come up again. All of those issues were fixed for a total of £655. So, how much more are we going to look at on this list? Right, there's a few more yet. Yeah, don't worry. Although we're not far off, to be honest. Number 10, April 2020, service. Really, I did a DIY oil change and filter change using a suction tank to remove the oil, and I purchased the suction tank, which I'm not going to include in this cost, of £49.95, because you can use that time and again. And the cost of the filter and 2 lots of oil, £90.14. Moving on to January 2023, just gone. I'd booked it in for an MOT, and the day before I decided to go and blow up all the tyres to make sure they were okay, because I check that usually once every week or two. And I found that the rear offside tyre was pretty much flat. And I thought, it was up the other day. So I blew it up, and just as I was about to put the tyre cap back on, I could hear it hissing, and it was actually coming from the tyre valve. It's the first time in driving since I was 18 that I've ever had a leaky tyre valve. So I know you can fit them yourself and get a tool to do it, but I was short on time. I'd only got just over a day to fix it. So there's a local guy who fixes tyres and does other sort of work, and the total cost was £30 to replace the valve, and it's fine now. And it passed the MOT. So let's add all of that up. So I think we're going to include the cost of the MOTs in this as well. So that was £235, give or take, over 5 years. And obviously you're not going to get away without paying that. So the total cost of 5-year ownership, not including tax, insurance and fuel, of maintaining the Range Rover Sport, is £2,882.44, or 30 pence a mile over the mileage I've done. So that's £576.49 per year over the 5-year period in maintenance. Now, I don't think that's unreasonable, to be honest, because most of these items that are fixed or had fixed are relatively common issues, and I think if you own a Range Rover for long enough, you're going to encounter these issues. Some people more, some people less, but they're there, they have to be done, and I'm not too disappointed in that amount of maintenance cost. I think it was a little bit cheaper than it would have been because I've done quite a few jobs myself. So if you're someone who doesn't like doing a few DIY jobs, then it's going to cost a little bit more. Oh, it's getting bloody chilly sitting here, but anyway, I'm going to summarise now so I can go and have a cup of coffee and get out the cold and edit this video. So let's summarise in a couple of things. So let's summarise with a couple of things. You speak to a lot of people and you say Range Rovers are a money pit, they're always going wrong. I'd never have one. But they are absolutely brilliant cars in my view. They're comfortable, they're safe, they're enjoyable to drive, and all of this. We looked around at various different SUVs, from Porsche Cayenne, the Discovery, BMW X5, Volvo, that big bloody thing the Volvo do, and a few others, Audi Q5, and we found this the most comfortable. And if you've got a bad back, then I'd certainly recommend one of these. So if you know a decent independent JLR trained mechanic who knows his way around these things, it's going to be cheaper than going to a JLR garage. So my recommendation is to find someone that you can trust. Yes, things will go wrong. You've got your general maintenance to do, and you should have, I'd say, £1,000, £1,500, maybe a touch more, as a fund put to one side so that if something does go wrong, it's not a shock to the bank balance. So let's summarise. You hear a lot of people saying that they never have a Range Rover, they're a money pit, they're always going wrong, it's too much electronics on them. And to some degree there is a little bit of truth in that, but not as much as people would have you believe. Yes, I've had, 1, 2, 3, 4 sensors go wrong in this car. And while I'm talking about that, I did have a sensor in the petrol tank. Okay, there's another thing that I did have. Before we go into summarise, I'll just touch on what I call ghost faults. And they are items that will come up on the dashboard and say restricted performance, which I had in one particular case. And before we go into summarise, I'll just touch on another thing. and that is what I would call ghost faults. And for example, I had one occasion where I was driving along, I just got below about half a tank of fuel in, and all of a sudden a message come up, find the nearest fuel station or petrol station, because the fuel level is dangerously low. This happened twice in successive journeys. Now, I knew the tank was half full because I kept records at the time. So I talked to the JLR mechanic, and he said it's probably the second level sensor in the fuel tank. Apparently there's two, one for the first half, one for the second half. And it's a big job to replace those, and it's a fuel tank out job. Fortunately, after those two times it occurred, it hasn't happened again, and that was about 3 years ago. So sometimes you get something like that. There was another one I had, which I can't remember what it is now because it was so long ago, where again it was a fault that came up on the dashboard. Next time I got in, it was clear, no problem. So those are the things to take into account. So in summary, you hear many people say owning a Range Rover is a dodgy business. They're always going wrong, too many sensors on them, and they're always playing up, and you're having to replace them, and a bit of a money pit. Yes, there are a lot of sensors. I've had, 1, 2, 3, 4 go wrong, and had to replace them. A few of them are DIY, and if you can do them yourself, you'll save some money, but you know, those are common issues, and I don't think it's not going to cause me not to have a Range Rover, but there you go. But taking that into account, and the oh fucking hell, David. So let's summarise then. So, am I going to keep the Range Rover Sport? To be honest, I'm undecided. I absolutely love it. It's a brilliant car. Yes, it's thirsty. Yes, it's expensive to tax and insure if you're not going to use it. And that's where my problem lies at the moment, and over the past 2 years I haven't really done any big journeys in it. Generally short journeys of about 5 to 7 miles, and it's not good for the car, and at some point there's a potential for some bigger problems due to lack of use. So I think I'll expand on this in another video, to be honest, because what I plan to do is, after this video has gone out, the next video will be about all of the things that need doing on the car. Some of them minor, there's nothing that's going to stop me using the car, but it needs a few items doing, which I will probably be doing myself. So I hope this has been a bit of an insight into actually the costs and things that go wrong with a typically used 2010 3-litre TDV6 Range Rover Sport HSE. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I hope you've liked this video. Look out for the next one. Should be coming in a week or so. Probably a week, to be honest. So, ta-ta for now. I'm going to go and get a hot cup of tea, no, coffee, and then I'll edit this video. So see you soon. Ta-ta. Be safe.